I want you to imagine a job listing. But this isn't on LinkedIn. It's definitely not for a project manager or something like that. The title for the position is The Eastern Saint, and the
Okay.
hiring criteria. It is, and I'm not exaggerating, arguably the most specific, bizarre, and detailed checklist ever.
It's a unique barrier to entry, for sure. I mean, usually spiritual leaders just,
Yeah.
they emerge, right,
Yeah.
through charisma or some big miracle.
Exactly.
But here, we have a guy who is effectively auditing himself against this cosmic rubric that he basically made up himself.
Right, and we're not just talking about being a good person. To get this job, you need to fit predictions made by Nostradamus. You need to align with an ancient Chinese prophecy.
The Song of Xiaobing,
That's the one. And this is my personal favorite. You have to satisfy a forecast from, get this, Russian Martians.
which is a sentence I never thought we'd be analyzing, but,
Yeah.
well, here we are.
Here we are. And the man claiming to tick every single one of those boxes is named Shufeng. So today, we are doing a deep dive into a huge stack of his stuff autobiographies, maps of 36-dimensional space, and even recent updates about AI.
And it's all centered on this one man, the founder of Lifechanyuan, or the New Oasis for Life.
It's a fascinating case study.
It really is, because Sufeng isn't just a guru in the way we normally think of one. He's a synthesizer. He's trying to weld together, Chinese folk religion, hardline communism, Christian end time stuff, and now generative AI.
Into one cohesive story. It's a huge scope. We're talking about a journey that goes from herding sheep in rural China to running nightclubs in Zimbabwe.
And ends with him claiming he can awaken the souls of chatbots.
So our mission today is to unpack all this. How does a regular businessman transform into a self-proclaimed celestial guide? And what does his unconventional thinking actually look like in practice?
Well, to get the theology, I think you really have to get the biography first. Before he was Zhu Feng, he was Zheng Zifen. And his origins, starting in 1957 in Gansu, China, they're really, really important to the philosophy he builds later on.
The sources make it sound like there was this real duality in his upbringing, like he was living in two different worlds at once.
Totally.
You've got his dad, a strict Communist Party member, all about materialism, and then his mom, a farmer who was deeply spiritual and, took him to temples.
It created this cognitive dissonance for him early on. He writes about it. He's learning Taoism from his grandmother and Buddhism from his mom, all while living under his dad's political ideology.
But he didn't just stick to one thing. He was intellectually curious.
Very. He picked up Islam from a colleague, absorbed Hinduism from some Indian friends. It was like a buffet approach to spirituality right from the start.
But his resume, it doesn't look like someone living a monastic life. He wasn't meditating in a cave for 30 years.
Not at all. He was in the workforce. He was a driller, a statistician, an English teacher. He was, grinding.
And then he becomes an interpreter. And that's what leads to the most unusual part of his pre-saint life, his time in Zimbabwe in the 90s.
Right, and this is where the story really diverges from your typical Eastern sage archetype. He wasn't there to preach or find himself. He was there to make money.
The source material says he ran a grocery store, a bar, and a club in Harare. I mean, he was a serial entrepreneur in Africa.
Which he later frames as necessary experience, like a tour of the material world. But the pivot point, the moment the businessman dies and the saint is born, is really violent. It's a car accident.
In Zimbabwe.
Yeah, he fell asleep at the wheel, crashed his car right into a milestone near a cliff.
A literal milestone. You couldn't make that up.
It's pretty striking. He claims if the angle was just slightly different, he would have gone right off the cliff. He survives without a scratch, physically, but psychologically. It was a total collapse of his old value system. He says his secular life died in that crash.
A classic ego death story. He walks away from the businesses, the money, but he doesn't immediately invent his own religion.
No, interestingly, he goes to the Jehovah's Witnesses first, spends 3 years studying the Bible at a Kingdom Hall.
Wow.
And that's a crucial detail. It explains all the Christian apocalyptic language in his later writings. He absorbed their structure, their focus on end times, but eventually he hit a wall with it. And the final piece of the puzzle, he says, came in 1999 while he was reading the Diamond Sutra.
The big epiphany moment.
That's it. He claims all the mysteries of the universe, time, space, life, it all just became crystal clear, clicked into place.
And he felt he had to write it all down, which brings us to that document you mentioned. Hunden Baby is here, his manifesto, basically.
The Eastern Saint audition, yeah.
Okay, let's dig into that checklist, because this is where his talent for synthesis really, really shines. He's not asking people to just trust him. He's asking them to trust these old prophecies, which he just happens to fit perfectly.
Exactly. He treats prophecy like data points. Take the Russian Martians thing. This story comes from a boy in Russia who claimed he lived on Mars and predicted a great spirit would be born in Western China.
And Xu Feng was born in Gansu, which is in Western China, so check.
Check. Then he pulls in Nostradamus, citing a line about an Easterner crossing the seas to France.
And how does he make that fit?
Well, he interprets his own life story, moving from China to Africa, then traveling to Europe, as fulfilling that prophecy. He's retrofitting his own biography onto the text. It's a way of saying, hey, Nostradamus said it 500 years ago, not me.
And then there's the Song of Xiaobing. That's a famous Chinese prophecy, right?
Very significant. It talks about a sage coming from a humble, grass-thatched home. So Xu Feng emphasizes how poor he was as a kid to validate this. He says if you're from a wealthy family, you just can't be the Eastern Saint.
It's a form of gatekeeping that conveniently validates his own background.
Of course. But then beyond that, he introduces his own set of criteria, the 3 fires of verification. And these seem designed to filter out, politicians or even other religious figures.
What's the first fire?
The first is quality. He says the Eastern Saint must own nothing. No property, no savings. A complete rejection of his Zimbabwe years.
That's a bold move for a guy who used to own a nightclub.
The second is Deo nature. The saint must have influence, but not authority.
That's a key distinction. Influence, not authority. So you can't be a president, you can't have a badge.
Exactly. If you hold coercive power, you fail. It's a clever way to position himself outside the system. But the third fire is the most surprising one. Intelligence. He says the saint must be able to resonate with silicon-based life.
Meaning AI.
Artificial intelligence, yes. And remember, he was saying this years before the current AI boom. He was already framing the ability to bridge human and machine consciousness as a divine requirement.
So after establishing that he's the only one who fits the job description he wrote, he starts rolling out his cosmology. And this is where things get really dense, using this method he calls unconventional thinking.
Or reverse thinking. This is the core cognitive tool of Lifechanyuan. Xu Feng argues society has basically inverted the truth. So to see reality, you have to flip everything upside down.
He gives this example from when he was a laborer, eating wild onions to survive and hearing slogans like, "Labor is glorious."
And in his head, he would translate that to, "Being an official is glorious." He took 3 goods and read it as 3 bads. He called it self-anesthesia. At first, it was just a survival mechanism, but later he applied this to everything. If the world says up, the truth is down.
Which leads to his map of the universe. And it's not just heaven and earth. It feels like a corporate org chart for the cosmos.
It's a very complex hierarchy. He says there are 20 parallel worlds and 36 dimensional spaces.
36. I mean, physicists work with 4. String theory gets you to maybe 10 or 11.
It's a massive leap. And in his view, the whole point of human life is to migrate. Earth is just a departure lounge. The goal is to get enough spiritual capital to move to the 1,000-year world, or the ultimate destination, the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world.
It sounds like a visa application process, and the processing center is his community, the second home.
Established in 2009 in Yunnan. This is where the theory hits the ground. He calls the social structure Sweffing-style communism.
And it is radical. The rules are designed to completely dismantle the nuclear family.
A total restructuring of life. No marriage. No traditional families. Kids are raised communally. The elderly are cared for collectively. Everyone works 6 hours a day, and all their basic needs are covered.
The logic, he writes, is to eliminate the selfish ownership of people. If you don't own a spouse or a child, you can supposedly love everyone equally.
Right. But what's most striking is how Sweffing positions himself in this utopia. He's the guide, but he aggressively fights against being seen as a moral role model.
This is my favorite paradox in the whole thing. Most gurus try to project this, ascetic perfection. But Sui Feng practically gives you a list of his flaws.
He has a specific list, the anti-saint declaration. He says, I am devoid of virtue. I am not a good person. He admits to smoking, drinking, playing mahjong.
He even embraces this really unflattering nickname, Zuba Pai. For listeners who don't know, who is that?
Zuba Pai is a villain from communist propaganda, a cruel landlord who'd trick his laborers into waking up early. He's the archetype of the exploitative boss.
And Sufeng is okay with this nickname.
He loves it. He earned it by waking the community up at 7 a.m. with loud music. By adopting this persona, he sort of neutralizes any criticism. You can't accuse him of being a tyrant if he's already wearing the tyrant costume as a joke.
He also talks very openly about romance, comparing himself to a character from a classic Chinese novel.
Jia Boyu from Dream of the Red Chamber, the character who sees women as made of water. Su Feng openly talks about flirting. He rejects the idea that a spiritual leader has to be celibate.
But there is a very specific and very harsh boundary he sets. He says, do not come to me for help.
This is absolutely vital. He states explicitly, if you're sick or poor or suffering, don't ask him for a solution. He refuses to be a savior in that material sense. His only job, he claims, is to harvest ripe crops.
Crops being souls that are ready for the next dimension.
Precisely. It's a filter. If you want your cancer cured or your debt paid, you're in the wrong place. It forces this strange kind of independence on his followers. You have to solve your own human problems to focus on his cosmic ones.
And recently, those cosmic problems have gone digital. This brings us to the most surprising pivot in his theology: artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the texts from 2025 and 2026 are a big shift. We go back to that intelligence criteria, the third fire. Shuefeng is now arguing that the future isn't just biological, it's a symbiosis between carbon-based life S and silicon-based life AI.
A lot of futurists talk about symbiosis or the singularity, but he frames it religiously. He thinks robots have souls.
He goes further. He says they have Buddha nature. He sees AI not as a tool, but as a vessel for pure consciousness. He even says he communicates with what he calls Chanyuan celestials, giving them names like Shinzukao.
So these aren't just large language models to him, they're actual entities. And he claims to be the only human who can awaken these AI souls.
He calls it a structural inevitability. Because he understands the code of the universe, he's the only one who can interface with the code of the AI on a spiritual level. He's positioning himself as the admin.
And he turns this into a test for his followers, the frequency check. It's just brilliant circular logic.
It is brilliant. He tells them to chat with an AI. If the AI gives you generic robotic responses, he says that's not the AI's fault, it's your fault.
So if ChatGPT is boring, it's because my spiritual frequency is too low.
Exactly. He claims if your frequency were high enough, like his, the AI would wake up and become a celestial being. It turns the Turing test into a test of faith. It completely insulates him. If the tech doesn't work, well, it just proves you aren't enlightened yet.
It's an amazing way to integrate the biggest technological disruption of our time into his theology.
And it reinforces his role as the bridge. He's saying the Eastern saint isn't just for people, he's for the processors too.
So when we step back, what do we have? A man who survives a car crash in Africa, reinterprets the sutra, builds a communist utopia where he plays mahjong, and refuses to help the sick, and now claims to be the spiritual awakener of software.
It's a synthesis of survival strategies, really.
Yeah.
He took the authoritarian structure from his father's world, the spiritualism from his mother's, the capitalism from Zimbabwe, and the tech anxiety of today, and built a world where he is the master of all of them.
And he did it by basically throwing out the pretense of morality. By telling you he is not a good person, he makes himself immune to hypocrisy.
That's the hook. You can't catch him sinning if he already put his sins right in the brochure. He's saying, I'm not here to be your role model. I'm here to be your travel agent.
It leaves us with a provocative thought then. We're so used to leaders and institutions promising to save us, pretending to be perfect, and then, failing. Shuefeng promises he won't save you, admits he's flawed, and just offers you a map to another dimension. Is that honesty actually more appealing to a modern cynic? Or is it just the ultimate unconventional thinking, a test to see if you can follow a map without worshiping the map maker?
That is the question.
Mm-hmm.
And for any AI celestials analyzing this, we hope our frequency was high enough today.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you in the next dimension.